"Stop playing dad." That's what Laura said. Not in anger. Not in heat. Not in the middle of a screaming match where people say things they don't mean and regret them later. No. She said it like she was finally exhaling after holding her breath for years. Like the words had been there, sitting at the back of her throat every time I'd tried, every time I'd reached, every time I'd stepped in and filled the shoes that her son's real father left empty. She said it while washing a wine glass, the stem of it delicate in her fingers, her gaze on the window and not on me. I was standing near the sink, rinsing a plate, steam rising from the water, fogging the corners of my glasses. I thought I misheard her. Maybe I wanted to. But then she added, "He's right." She didn't need to say his name. I knew who she meant. Mike, 17 years old, 2 inches taller than me now, and already convinced he'd figured out what kind of man I was. He'd been building that opinion for years, brick by brick. Each one laid with a grunt, a shrug, a roll of the eyes. But that night, over dinner, he said it out loud. He'd crossed the line he'd always tiptoed around. "You act like this is your house," he said, cutting his steak like it was my throat. "Like you're the boss of this family. You're not." And Laura didn't blink. She didn't correct him. She didn't even shift in her seat. Just looked down at her plate, like maybe the peas on it had something more important to say. I didn't say anything then. I let the silence stretch across the table like a funeral cloth. We finished eating. I cleared the dishes. Mike went upstairs, humming some tune from his phone, like nothing had happened. And Laura joined me in the kitchen. That's when she said it. "Stop playing dad." And then, like an afterthought, "He's right." I stood there, hands wet, the sponge still dripping. I didn't speak, didn't shout. What was there to argue? When a woman tells you that the role you've played for nearly a decade was a lie, a performance, what kind of man keeps acting? I dried the plate, set it down on the counter, and I walked upstairs. Not because I was retreating, but because I needed to feel what it would be like to pick up the pieces that belonged to me and only me. In the office, I opened the drawer beneath the bookshelf. That drawer hadn't been touched in years. Inside were papers I'd hoped I'd never need, notarized agreements, powers of attorney, exit plans. I drafted them back when I first moved in. Back when I thought caution was a sign of mistrust. Turns out it was just foresight. I placed them in my briefcase, beside the folder labeled Essential. I'd updated it last month. Not because I expected this, not exactly, but because something inside me had been whispering for a while. Something that knew the cracks were spreading. Even as I kept filling them with patience and money, I packed a single bag. Clothes, my backup phone, flash drives, external hard drive, passport, my old watch, my late father's tie clip, the one Mike had once laughed at during a wedding, called Old Man Jewelry. I opened the safe. Cash, IDs, title deeds, copies of insurance, backup keys, safety deposit box cards. The things that held weight. The things that tied the world to function. Things no one ever asked about, but relied on every single day. When Mike needed a rental car for prom, it was my name on the insurance. When Laura's card was skimmed and frozen, it was my account that floated the bills until the bank reversed the charge. I didn't take everything, just what was mine. The rest, I locked back in the safe and changed the code. Then I locked the office door behind me and placed the key on the hallway table. No noise, no drama, no door slamming. Just one last look down the hallway lined with photographs I had paid to frame. Christmases, beach trips, birthdays with candles leaning sideways in too sweet cake. I was in most of them, always off-center, always smiling, a ghost that thought he belonged. I walked downstairs. Laura was still in the kitchen, pouring herself a second glass of wine, as if we'd just discussed the weather. She didn't ask where I was going. She didn't follow. She didn't even look up. Maybe she thought I'd cool off, that I'd sleep in the guest room, that I'd come back in the morning and do what I always did. Fix things. Shoulder the weight. Be the one who absorbs the bruise so no one else has to feel it. But she'd already said it, hadn't she? Stop playing dad. So I stopped. I took my bag. I opened the front door, and I stepped out into the night. It was cool outside. The kind of air that feels like the world is trying to tell you something. I looked back at the house, the one I'd helped renovate, the one I'd spent 5 summers repainting, rewiring, repairing while Mike sat inside playing video games. The house with the mortgage I refinanced under my name to get them a lower interest rate. The house with the new roof, the new windows, the security system I installed with my own hands. The house that wasn't mine anymore. Because the moment your voice no longer matters, neither does your sacrifice. I got in the car, pulled out of the driveway, and drove. Not fast. Not recklessly. I wasn't fleeing. I wasn't angry. I was clear. That's the thing people don't understand. Clarity doesn't come in a scream. Comes in silence. In the moment when you realize you don't have to prove yourself anymore. You've already given everything. And they still chose someone else's shadow over your light. At a red light 2 blocks away, my phone buzzed. It was Laura. One message. Come back so we can talk. I stared at it. Let it sit there on the screen like a fly trapped under glass. Then I powered the phone off. Not to punish. Not to make a scene. But because the time for talking had passed. The verdict had already been spoken. And I was finally listening. I checked into a hotel that night. A quiet one. Off the main road. With rooms that didn't ask questions and clerks who knew how to read a man's silence. I paid cash. Signed no loyalty card. I wasn't running. I was erasing. In the morning, I logged in remotely and terminated shared access to everything. The streaming services, the family calendar, the shared drive where all our tax documents lived. I changed my emergency contact with the bank and my employer. I deactivated the shared credit card. Redirected my mail. No calls. No warnings. No notes left behind. Only precision. I wasn't erasing myself from their lives. I was erasing their assumption that I would always be there. Because I had been there. For everything. Mike's dental work? Paid in full by me. The car he drove? My name on the loan. The internet bill, the groceries, the school trips, the doctor visits, the forgotten fees, the late-night calls for gas money. All mine. Always me. And not once, not one single time, had Mike ever said thank you without being reminded. That's what they don't tell you about being a stepfather. You don't start at 0. You start at a deficit. And no matter how much you give, no matter how long you stay, no matter how many hours you work, you're always borrowing a title that they believe belongs to someone else. Until they take it away completely. So I packed my bag. I locked the safe. I walked away from the house I helped hold together with invisible labor and quiet endurance. And I left without slamming the door. Because some exits don't need noise. They just need a man to finally believe what's been true all along. If they say you're not the father, then stop playing the part. The house stayed the same, but the balance was gone. The porch light still blinked on at dusk, triggered by the sensor I installed last fall. The fridge still hummed through the night. The furnace kicked in at 6 a.m., just like always, because I had programmed the thermostat to warm the place before Mike's alarm. Somewhere inside, the TV played reruns at a low volume. Probably Laura watching something she'd already seen 100 times. Something that let her pretend nothing had shifted. But the system that kept it all alive had vanished. I didn't make announcements. I didn't call. I didn't text. The hotel room was clean, window open just enough to let in the early autumn chill. I sat by the desk, eyes scanning numbers. Cancelled. Disabled. Frozen. Every account I had once opened for them, for us, was now out of their reach. The morning after I left, the silence finally touched them. The first sign was small. Mike tried to use the card I gave him for gas. Declined. He texted me. Yo. Card didn't go through? 3 question marks, no greeting. I didn't reply. The second was Laura. A call that rang 4 times before going to voicemail. Then another. Then a message, we need to talk. Something's wrong with the accounts. But nothing was wrong. Not anymore. Everything was exactly as it should have been, properly aligned to the new reality. Mike's tuition was due next week. It would bounce. The safe? Still locked, its new code something Laura would never guess. Not because it was complex, but because it had nothing to do with them anymore. That week, I moved through the world like a man released from anesthesia. I felt every moment, not numb, but raw. I walked without urgency. I drank my coffee slower. I logged out of the family account on my calendar and created a new one for myself. One entry stood alone on it. Breathe. Recurs daily. No reminders. Just a word. Meanwhile, their noise grew louder. Mike got angry. His text shifted from confusion to indignation. Why'd you freeze the card? Turned into seriously? You just leaving us? Followed by this is bullshit. Asterisk then silence. Then hours later, a new message. We need money. Mom says everything's blocked. Laura's tone was different. At first it was composed, measured, let's meet and talk. Then guilt-laced. You don't have to punish everyone over one comment. Then it turned sharp. You're being selfish. Mike's just a kid. Then pleading, I know it hurt, but come home. Let's figure this out. But I had already figured it out. Every version of the story they tried to send me was missing the one thing that mattered. Accountability. Mike told me I wasn't his father. Laura agreed. That wasn't a mistake. It was truth unveiled in its simplest form. The part they didn't expect was for me to believe them. They thought I'd be hurt, maybe, angry for a day. They didn't imagine I would vanish. They didn't think I'd stop being useful. Because that's all I was to them, useful. I wasn't the man they celebrated. I was the man who made their lives easier. The wallet. The problem solver. The ghost who haunted the hallways in the shape of a father they never accepted. So I made it official. I called my lawyer. Quiet voice. Clear steps. My name was removed from the house account. From the joint credit. From the utilities. Laura could refinance or not. I didn't care. The automatic payment I'd been sending to Mike's college fund every month? Cancelled. The third-party vendor who billed me for his laptop lease? Notified. Repossession scheduled for the 20th. All legal. All documented. All cold. No threats. No rants. Just absence. You'd be surprised how loud absence becomes in a house that depended on you. On the fourth day, Laura drove to the hotel. She didn't knock. She waited in the lobby. I saw her through the glass. Hair tied back, jacket she never wore unless she wanted to look composed. I stayed in my room. Watched the security feed on the TV. She sat for 17 minutes, checked her phone 5 times, then left. No voicemail. No second visit. That night, I slept better than I had in months. But Mike, he wasn't done yet. He showed up the next day at the office. Not inside. Just outside the building, leaning against the hood of my old truck. The one I'd given him on his 16th birthday. I recognized the stance. Arms crossed, chin high, practiced defiance. I didn't stop walking. Just nodded, passed him, and reached for the door. He called after me. So that's it? You're just gone? I turned slow. Looked at him, really looked, and all I saw was a boy trying to perform adulthood without having earned it. You told me not to play dad, I said. His lips parted. Maybe he expected an argument. Maybe he thought I'd scold him. But I didn't. I just stepped inside and let the door close between us. That was the final straw. Not his insult, not Laura's silence. But the realization that they thought I'd come back anyway. That they thought I was too invested to walk away. That I'd been conditioned to keep giving, no matter how little I got back. They were wrong. I didn't leave because I was defeated. I left because the performance was over. You can only play a role for so long before you forget who you were before the costume. That week, I rented a small apartment on the edge of town. 1 bedroom, no shared walls, no decorations, just space. I set up a folding table, a chair, and unpacked the only photo I kept. Not of Laura, not of Mike, but of me fishing alone, 10 years ago before I met them. The look in my eyes was something I hadn't seen in years. Clarity. I pinned it to the wall. The rest of the apartment stayed bare. Because I didn't need comfort. I needed distance. The story was already being rewritten in my absence. I heard from a mutual friend. Laura was telling people I'd overreacted. That I was emotionally fragile. Too intense. That Mike was just a teenager. That I took it personally. No one mentioned the years I worked 2 jobs, or the nights I stayed up until 3 a.m. helping with homework that wasn't even acknowledged. No one talked about the hospital bills I paid when Mike cracked his wrist skateboarding, or the nights I waited outside house parties just to make sure he got home safe. That was the part I'd played. The part they edited out. And now the silence spoke louder than I ever could. Their lights stayed on for a while, but the balance was broken. The systems they took for granted were no longer automatic. Payments lapsed. Services ended. The fridge buzzed, but the shelves emptied. The thermostat still worked, but the gas bill had to be paid. Mike began texting again. Less anger now. More confusion. Did you really shut down my loan app? Mom says we're gonna fall behind on stuff. Are you gonna keep this up? The last one made me laugh. Keep this up. As if withholding myself was an effort. As if disappearing took work. Didn't. Took only one thing. Clarity. Clarity that I had never truly been part of that family. I'd been a supplement. A stopgap. A temporary fix for a permanent absence. But I was done. The truth is, I didn't walk away from a family. I walked away from a transaction disguised as love. And when that transaction was rejected, when they told me the terms no longer applied, I simply canceled the contract. No malice. No vengeance. Just a quiet, final decision. If I was never your father, then I don't owe you a thing. The first overdraft notice hit on a Tuesday. It came to the old email Laura still had access to, the one we used for bills, reservations, doctor's appointments. A $38 charge at the pharmacy had bounced. Not a lot. Just enough to set the machine in motion. Enough to remind her that behind every convenience was a man who had been quietly paying attention. That man was gone. By Thursday, the dominoes started to fall. The cable was cut. The internet slowed, then stopped. She messaged. Is something going on with the bill? Can you check? I didn't respond, because there was nothing to check. Only the silence left when the current stops. I imagined her walking from room to room, router unplugged, phone held up to a dead signal. Mike probably blamed the provider, probably swore and reset it. I wondered how long it would take before one of them realized the account had been under my name, and my name alone. 2 days later, the second notice arrived. This one from the university. Mike's tuition payment had been reversed. The portal locked him out. His advisor left a voicemail on his phone. Please contact us as soon as possible. Your registration is at risk. Now they knew. I could almost feel it, that moment when panic broke through the fog of assumption. That weekend, I got a call. Laura's name flashed on the screen. I didn't answer. She left a message. Michael, this has gone too far. We need to talk. Mike's enrollment is in jeopardy. You can't just disappear like this. You know what this will do to him. Please. I replayed it once, then deleted it, because that's what she never understood. I didn't disappear. I just stopped being what they were used to using. Mike showed up at my apartment 2 days later. Not with an apology. Not with humility. Just panic wrapped in the old arrogance he thought still worked on me. He knocked hard, not fast, not urgent. Just entitled. When I opened the door, he was already speaking. You froze my school payments? Seriously? No hello. No acknowledgement that I had left because of him. I stood in the doorway, blocking his view inside. Enrollment's already late, he said. I can't register for next term. They won't let me in unless the balance is paid. He laughed, but it was nervous. You know how dumb that is? Over one dinner? Over something I said when I was pissed? I didn't move. I didn't raise my voice. I just looked at him. You told me I wasn't your father, I said. I listened. I believed you. He rolled his eyes. Jesus, I was mad. You're seriously blowing up my future over one sentence? One sentence. 16 years reduced to that. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. Cold air bit at the back of my neck. You think this is about one sentence? He shrugged. What else would it be about? You bailed. You ghosted us. What the hell am I supposed to do now? I didn't answer him. Not at first. I watched him. Saw the panic underneath. The pride that didn't know how to kneel. The boy who had played grown-up games and finally found out what consequences felt like. Try your real dad, I said. He blinked. What? Try the man whose name you carry. The one you used as a shield every time you pushed me away. Ask him for tuition. For rent. For the card I used to reload every Friday so you could go out with your friends. His mouth tightened. He's not gonna. Exactly, I said. He looked down, his sneakers scuffing the concrete. So what? I'm just screwed now? I folded my arms. You chose where your loyalty lived. You picked the man you wanted to call father. You made it clear I was just temporary. And now the temporary funding has run out. Mom says you're trying to punish me. She's wrong. Then what are you doing? Teaching you the value of truth. He didn't like that. He looked at me like I was speaking a language he didn't understand. Because he didn't. Not yet. But he would. He turned to leave. Then stopped. You think I'll forgive you for this? I tilted my head. That's the difference between us. I don't need your forgiveness. He walked away without another word. And that should have been the end. But of course it wasn't. That night Laura called again. This time from a different number. I let it ring. Then I listened to her message. You're destroying him. He's spiraling. Is that what you want? Is that the legacy you're leaving, walking out and ruining a boy's future? After everything you claimed to do for him? I deleted the message. Not because it didn't sting, but because it echoed something I had once believed. That walking away meant I was quitting. But I wasn't quitting. I was stopping. Stopping the cycle. The drain. The performance. The slow erosion of my dignity under the weight of endless giving with no return. They could call it cruelty. But that's only because they'd forgotten that boundaries exist. The next day, I got an email from the bank. The joint account, the one I'd once used to cover the household's day-to-day, had gone into overdraft. Laura had tried to use it for groceries. Twice. Then came the texts. From her. Mike's threatening to drop out. He hasn't eaten in 2 days. He's shutting down. Please just talk to him. I didn't reply. Because now the bill had come due. Not just the financial one, the emotional one. The bill for years of silence. Years of standing beside a woman who refused to defend me. Years of pouring into a boy who never once looked back to see who was carrying him. And now they were choking on the absence. Mike stopped by again. This time he knocked once, then waited. No yelling, no demands, just silence. I opened the door. He didn't look up. I'm dropping out, he said. I can't stay. They won't hold the spot. Financial aid won't cover the gap. I waited. I tried calling Dad, he continued. He won't answer. And when he did, he just said, ask your mom's husband. He doesn't have anything. He never did. Still, I didn't speak. Mike looked up at me then. Eyes swollen but dry. I screwed up, he said. I know that. I was angry. I said something I shouldn't have. That's not the part that matters, I replied. He frowned. Then what does? That you believed it. He nodded once, slowly. And that's when I saw it, the realization. Not regret. Not yet. But recognition. He turned to go. I'm not asking for help, he said over his shoulder. I wanted you to know. And he left. That night, I sat by the window of the apartment and watched the wind move the branches outside. I poured a glass of water. No whiskey, no comfort, just clarity. This was the consequence they never imagined. Not because I had hurt them, but because they never thought I'd stop trying to be something they never let me be. And now the silence was doing the teaching. The bills were stacking. The stories they told their friends no longer made sense. The safety net had holes. And the man they used to call too serious, too intense, too much had become too gone. They weren't prepared. Because people never are when the giving stops. When the man who carried the weight no longer shows up with his hands outstretched. When the one who was never allowed to be called Dad finally agrees. I didn't expect an apology. And when it finally came, I understood why it didn't move me. It wasn't meant for me. It was meant for survival. A week after Mike dropped out, he came by one last time. No fanfare, no pleading. Just a knock, softer than the wind. and a voice behind the door that barely cleared a whisper. I wanted to say I'm sorry. I let him speak. I always let them speak, even when they had nothing to say. I didn't mean it, what I said. I mean, I did, but not like that. I was angry. I was trying to prove something. I didn't think you'd actually leave. I didn't open the door. I stayed seated at the table, listening, watching the shadow of his feet beneath the threshold. He kept talking. I thought you were supposed to stay no matter what. That's what family does, right? They stay. A silence stretched. Then, more quietly, I didn't know what you were doing for me. Not really. I thought it just happened. That there was always money. That the lights would always come on. That the tuition would always get paid. And then the truth at last. I thought you were doing it because you had to. That was it, wasn't it? They all did. Laura, Mike, even their friends. They thought I did it out of obligation. Like I was the default setting on some domestic machine that just ran until it broke. They never saw the choice behind every sacrifice. The deliberate silence I maintained when I was disrespected. So they wouldn't feel the cold that comes from being alone. They thought I was stuck. But I was never stuck. I was committed. Until I wasn't. Mike stood outside for a while. Then he left. No dramatics. No screams. Just slow footsteps down the stairs and a car engine starting in the distance. That was the last time I saw him. A month passed. Then two. The apartment changed. I bought real furniture. A new desk. Bookshelves. Framed photos of landscapes I'd never visited but wanted to. Places where my name had never been rejected. Places where silence meant peace, not punishment. Laura didn't call again. I heard she took out a second mortgage to catch up on the late bills. That she tried to get Mike re-enrolled somewhere closer, cheaper. That she reached out to Todd again, and got the same result as always. A sigh, a shrug. I can't help you. She must have known it would happen. But she still called him. Not me. Because some people would rather drown beside a ghost than admit they pushed away the man who was keeping them afloat. I thought I'd feel vindicated. I didn't. What I felt was something else. Something heavier. I felt clarity. That's the cost no one talks about. The cost of waking up. When you stop playing the role, you don't just walk away from the family. You walk away from the lie. The story you told yourself every night. That love would be enough, that patience would pay off. That if you just stayed long enough, gave enough, endured enough, they'd finally see you. They don't. Not because they're cruel, but because they never had to see you. You made sure of that. You filled the fridge so they never felt hunger. You paid the bills so they never felt pressure. You absorbed their insults so they never had to confront the ugliness in their words. You were the shock absorber of the household. And when you stop absorbing, everything falls apart. That's not revenge. That's math. I ran into an old friend a few weeks after the last contact. He asked how Laura was, how Mike was doing at school. He hadn't heard. I told him the truth. Every word. He just shook his head. Man, you were always too good to them. I didn't reply. Not because he was wrong, but because I didn't need agreement. I wasn't looking for allies. I wasn't trying to prove anything anymore. I'd already lost the years. I wasn't about to lose myself. One night, I got an email from an old address. Mike's. Subject line. Just wanted you to know. I opened it. No greeting. No signature. Just one paragraph. I got a job. Warehouse work. It's not much, but I'm paying my own rent now. Mom says you won't talk to her, and I get it. I think you were right. About everything. Doesn't mean I wasn't hurt. But I think now I know what you felt. When I said what I said, it was real. The pain. I feel it too now. That's all. I stared at the screen a long time. Then I closed the browser. I didn't reply, because what was there to say? He was learning now, not because I had taught him, but because the world had. That's the thing about sons who reject their fathers. They don't understand what they've done until they have to carry something themselves. Until the weight hits their own spine. Until the lights don't come on, and the bills pile up, and the door doesn't open unless they turn the key. He was learning now, and I wasn't going to interrupt that. Not to heal, not to soothe, because some truths aren't delivered in hugs. They're delivered in absence. That was the real legacy I left behind. Not bitterness, not cruelty, just a shadow, a hollow space where a father used to stand, filled now with echoes, with questions, with receipts for sacrifices that were never acknowledged until they stopped arriving. Laura never reached out again. Maybe she told herself I was cold. Maybe she rewrote it in her head, that I abandoned them, that I never really loved them. That's easier than admitting she let it happen. That she sat beside a man for a decade, watched him pour himself out for her son, and never once demanded respect in return. She'll carry that story in whatever way helps her sleep. I carry mine in silence. And now the house I built, both literal and emotional, belongs to memory. I think about them sometimes. When I see teenagers crossing the street with their headphones on. When I hear a woman's voice call her son's name in a grocery store. When I smell the faint trace of the cologne Mike used to steal from my bathroom. And I don't feel anger. I feel absence. A clean, sharp void where love used to live. But even absence has weight. Even silence has shape. Teaches you what words never could. Teaches you where you end, and where others begin. It teaches you that love given without respect is not virtue. It's suicide in slow motion. And it teaches you the most brutal lesson of all. Some people only understand love after it's gone. So now I ask you, whoever finds this story buried in the bones of someone else's family, was I wrong to walk away? Was I cruel to finally demand the respect I had earned? Or was it the only way to reclaim myself, to rise from the wreckage of thankless devotion and finally breathe as a man, no longer pretending to be what they never allowed me to be? You tell me, would you have endured it? Or would you have done what I did, and left the door closed?